Hey everybody, Tekking101 here, and in today's One Piece theory video, we're going to be getting off the beaten track a little bit, kind of similar to what I did last week with the Oden video. The way I look at it is whenever you're doing a theory video, there are things called mainstream theories, things that are really prevalent in One Piece, the big mysteries of One Piece, the things that Oda is definitely going to reveal later down the line, like the Will of D, for instance. Like, Oda's definitely going to explain what's the deal with the D, you know, he isn't just going to just forget that. And so it's fun to make theory videos talking about what that can be and everything, and you'll be seeing a video from me about the Will of D, you know, in the near future. But then there's other theories that Oda doesn't like beat you over the head like talking about like people talk about the Will of D, so we know it exists. But there's other theories that like, ooh, Oda's maybe throwing like subtle hints in the chapters that we have to kind of hunt and try to get one over on him, and we'll be like part of like the elite group that actually, you know, sees something coming, you know, months, sometimes years in advance. So this is a theory that I actually came up with all by myself. I'm actually really proud of this one. It's something that took a lot of time to think about, but I think you'll be happy. Oh, god damn it. Right. I keep forgetting that I'm not the only one that uploads content on YouTube. I have to constantly keep reminding me of that. But no, yeah, Roger did a video on this like a year ago, and he kind of beat me to the punch on this one. But I talked to Roger a few weeks ago. I was in a live stream with him, and he said it was cool if I wanted to talk about this, and I thought about it for a little bit. So here's how this theory goes. Remember Monet? Yeah, you know, green hair, harpy, big tits. You know, she was that like secretary to Caesar Clown on Punk Hazard, which was funny because later on we found out that she actually outranks Caesar Clown. She was actually one like in the higher echelon of the Doflamingo family. She was the same rank as like she wasn't a high executive. Like Virgo was in the same rank as like a high executive like Pika and Trouble, but she was like in the same rank as like Gladys or freaking Jola or something. She was in that level there. So she was a pretty interesting character. I liked her because she wasn't like super in your face with the whole like I'm evil, I'm gonna kill you, you know. She was very stealthy and quiet, and she was like stalking the Straw Hats around Punk Hazard, and she had these really weird expressions like, yes, I just be like the prey into the snake's maw, and I'll bite you at the last minute there. But otherwise, she's very disarming. Didn't really seem to be doing much, you know, nefarious deeds. Eventually, we find out that she is pretty badass, and then she just straight up just goes all crazy nuts and attacks, you know, the Straw Hat crew and the Marines and everything. So her big moment during the arc, though, was her fight against Tashigi and Zoro, and it was revealed that she had the Yuki Yuki no Mi, the snow fruit. It was a Logia, turn into snow, pretty cool ability. Not really a ripoff of Aokiji either. Seemed to have its own unique like flow to it a little bit there. So Tashigi fought against her. Tashigi kind of got the shit kicked out of her. You know, she got like her, you know, she almost got her freaking arm ripped off by freaking Monet, because she can turn into like a Yuki Onna, like freaking demon snow woman from Japanese mythology. Was pretty damn cool. Yeah, pun, see? And eventually Zoro took over, sliced her in half, did not kill her, just kind of traumatized the shit out of her. And then, you know, the Tashigi was the one that dealt the finishing blow in that fight, but then they left to go to continue on the laboratory. So, what happened next, though, is after Monet composed herself and she got back together, literally pieced herself back together, she was right about to say, fuck this shit, and about to blow the entire laboratory up, because, you know, it's an evil scientist laboratory, you need to have a self-destruct button. I mean, come on now. Vegapunk had it, Caesar had it, this is just, you need to have the self-destruct button. So, she goes to try to push it. Right at the same time, you have Caesar, who is lying defeated, who believes that he's actually going to kill Smoker. He has what he thinks is Smoker's heart right next to him, so he picks up this, like, I think it's like an icicle, or like a piece of, like, sharp metal scrap or something, and he's like, you know, if I'm going out, everything I've worked for is going to be gone with the wind, and I'm going to take you with me, Smoker. Like, die! And stabs it right down in the heart that Law removed, and, however, it was like this old switcheroo, so it was switched out with Monet's heart, which Law also had in his possession, so right when Monet was about to push the self-D button, she gets her heart stabbed by Caesar, and then she dies, and that's the last time we see of her. So, the theory goes, though, what happened to her devil fruit? What happened to her Yuki Yuki no Mi? Now, many people were probably just like, well, what do you mean, what happened to it? She's dead, so, it got reincarnated. That's right. See, here's the interesting thing. Looking back on it, not just the fact that we found out in the Punk Hazard arc what actually happens to a devil fruit power after the user dies, because we found that out, but also looking back, there have not been that many characters in One Piece that have died with devil fruit powers. Now, there's not a lot of characters. Okay, in the present storyline, there are not that many characters in One Piece that die. That's mostly all reserved for Flashback Land. You know, in Flashback Land, all bets are off. People die in the most horrible ways possible. But just stay away from the grisly seinen manga that is the Flashback Land, and you'll be safe. But there have been a few characters that have died in the present storyline, but only a few of them actually had devil fruit abilities. So Monet is kind of put already sort of in a unique category here, where we don't have a lot of characters that die already in the present, and then even a select group of that actually had devil fruit powers. But it's important because during the events of Punk Hazard with Caesar's pet slime creature called Smiley, or was it Slimy? I'm pretty sure it was Smiley. This thing ate the axtol fruit, which I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but it was basically it was a zoan fruit that turned this inanimate mound of slime into like this reptilian creature, you know, like a lizard reptile sort of thing. And so after this thing got blown up, though, to become Shirokuni, the powers of that zoan were removed from the body because it's dead, and we found out that it actually goes to the nearest fruit in the vicinity, and whatever fruit is closest to where the character, the power holder died, that fruit gets reincarnated as the next devil fruit. So we knew devil fruits were reincarnated, like there can never be one at one time, but whenever someone dies, it gets brought back into the cycle. But I always just assume that, like, it's a random fruit anywhere in the world that becomes a devil fruit, but that's not the case. It's actually the one that is physically closest to when the power holder died. That's the one that gets, like, I guess, possessed by the devil fruit and becomes that. Okay, well, here's the thing. If Monet died, the Yuki Yuki Nomi would gravitate to the nearest fruit. Where is the nearest fruit? Well, Punk Hazard is a fucking desolate island. Half of it is a frozen Arctic wasteland, and the other half of it is like an entire realm of molten magma and streams of lava and volcanoes constantly going off. Point is, not going to be a lot of foliage on this island. The only reason what happened when Smiley died is because there just happened to be like a crew of Caesar Clown's men near the Smiley when it exploded. So there was like they had like a bag of food in their sleigh when they were traversing Punk Hazard, like a bag of like food rations, and there was some apples in there, and so it wasn't like a natural apple that was on a tree that got possessed by the fruit. It was just literally frozen Arctic wasteland and then just this one bag of apples. So the axtol fruit got, you know, gravitated to that, and boom. So if that's the case, though, and there's not a lot of plants on this island, what would be the nearest, you know, fruit that could be possessed by the Yuki Yuki Nomi? Well, what about Nami's tangerines on the Thousand Sunny? Now, and, you know, I thought this was a stretch at first, but seriously, think about this. Oda made it a good point to even bring up when Frankie retrieved the Thousand Sunny. He made it a big point that, like, Frankie, you know, they parked the Thousand Sunny on the burning side of the island, and then they had to bring it all the way around. There was even a diagram to show this, a diagram all the way back around to the frozen side. And Frankie himself was very, like, as soon as they escaped the cage, he was like, I gotta go check on the Sunny, and I gotta go bring it back around. So they made it a point to, like, okay, how the Sunny got from point A to point B right around the time Monet was on the frozen side of the island in Caesar Clown's lab when she died. And so if there wasn't, you know, that I'm just saying, it's very close. So how also the theory goes is, if that was the case and the Yuki Yuki Nomi is now reincarnated as one of the tangerines on Nami's, you know, plantation thing, her trees on the Sunny, you know, who would eat that fruit? They're probably most likely not aware of its existence because it's been pretty non-stop since Punk Hazard, you know, Dressrosa and then Zoe, and the Strats got separated and they got back together and they separated again. Whole shit with Sanji. So they're probably not checking on the fruits there. Although I will say there was a moment when they were starving, when they were on their way to go rescue Sanji, and they're literally on the ship starving. So you'd think at that point they would delve into the tangerines, but, you know, whatever. Anyway, the point of the matter is that they might not know it's there, but if it is there, who would eat it? And so general consensus points to Nami here, because, you know, it's Nami's tangerines, but also she's like the one of the crew that's like the weakest in terms of straight up power. And I touched upon this. I did a whole hour-and-a-half freaking Nami discussion. You can go check that out here. So the idea is like, oh, Nami's going to get a devil fruit. She's going to get the Yuki Yuki Nomi. Now, I don't like that idea. I actually think it's going to go a completely different direction if this is the case. If we're going to agree with the fact that Monet is dead. And by the way, there's even some conjecture whether or not Monet even died. I think she died, but there's some conjecture on that. But let's just go along with, okay, Monet died. You have the Yuki Yuki no Mi. The closest fruit was a tangerine. Let's just assume that. And okay, now the Straw Hats have a Logia fruit on the Thousand Sunny that they're just unaware of, but they'll find out maybe at some point. So who would eat it if that was the case, or what they would do with it? Okay, well, obviously, right off the bat, Luffy, Brook, Chopper, and Robin, they're all out because they already have Devil Fruit abilities. Frankie, I also believe, is out because during Dressrosa, when they were doing the Mera no Mi, they were trying to find win the the prize of the Coliseum. To get that, Luffy was trying to figure out, okay, well, I can't eat it because I have the Gumu Gumno powers, and so Frankie's right there. He's like, Frankie, do you want to turn into a giant flaming cyborg? And Frankie's like, well, I'm already kind of a flaming cyborg. No. But Frankie's like, no, I would prefer not to. I would prefer to keep the ability to swim. So, and also, Frankie doesn't need a Devil Fruit, okay? He has enough shit going on for him. He does not need to have a Devil Fruit. Kind of the same thing with Zoro and Sanji. They're pretty adept at hockey in their own right. They're pretty adept at using their own, unique abilities and stuff like that. They don't need Devil Fruits to be strong. They're already plenty enough strong to deal with those kind of contenders. So that only leaves us with two Straw Hats, Usopp and Nami. Once again, Usopp, I think he's really coming into his own here. He's never going to be at the level of like Sanji or Zoro, certainly. He's never going to be one to take on one of the bigger bads of the arc, but he, I think, is really starting to come into his own with his hockey abilities, his observation hockey, and his skills with the pop greens and everything. I still think Usopp has enough strength to contend with these stronger opponents. Maybe not the strongest people like in an arc, but second or third, he can maybe not defeat them, but he can at least deal with them. And especially if he learns how to master his observation hockey, and he might be one of the most adept people at using observation hockey in the series once he learns he has it and he trains with it a little bit. Okay? So that only leaves Nami, which would make sense in a lot of ways. I mean, Nami here, first off, she's a navigator, so having a Devil Fruit that enables her to control some element, like snow, that would fit well with her character. Also, Nami does have an ability, she does have a way to fight strong characters in the Climb Attack, but she is also, if she gets hit, that's pretty much it. She's not immune to physical damage. Zoro and Sanji, they're tanks, even if they don't have Devil Fruits. Frankie's a robot. He has metal freaking skin. Luffy's made of rubber. Brook's already dead. Yo ho ho ho. So he's immune to certain damage. But characters like, like Robin, for instance, she gets hit. She can't really, she gets seriously injured, and Nami's the same way. If she gets a one decisive blow, and that's all it could be, and it could take her out, She gets hit pretty hard by something. She's not the kind of character just going to stand back up and be like, oh, that didn't even hurt. I'm fine. So in that respect, having a Logia fruit might help her out a bit. But even so, with those being the case, I still don't think it's going to be Nami that would have this fruit. I don't like the idea of that one of the Straw Hats that have been around for that long getting an all-new power out of nowhere. I think that would kind of undermine their abilities they've already fostered throughout the story. Nami has her Climb Attack. That's kind of her trademark, and I think that's, all the upgrades she's had with it and her skills with the weather. I think that is her main ability. I feel like it would be undermined a little bit if, and all her training on Weatheria for 2 years, that would get kind of undermined if all of a sudden she just got a Logia power and then she has to train with using that. I don't like that. I don't like that theory. But what I do like is rather not getting an old Straw Hat this ability if it exists on the ship, but a new Straw Hat that ability. So I'm under the impression that the end of this arc might actually lead into getting not one, but two new Straw Hats. Jinbei and Carrot. Now, Jinbei is pretty much set in stone, because he's voiced his, I want to join the Straw Hats, I'm going to join the Straw Hats. He left Big Mom's crew in the last chapter, so as long as he doesn't manage to get killed at some point in this arc, he's most likely going to join the Straw Hats as the 10th member. Now, tacking Carrot onto that, many of you might be dubious at that. Like, whoa, we're going to get two Straw Hats at once? That's never happened before. That would seem rather weird. And Jinbei's been set up for years, Matt. Carrot's just kind of coming out of nowhere. Well, coming out of nowhere doesn't mean anything, and Brook came out of nowhere, he joined, so that's not a big deal. But I understand where you're coming from. We've never gotten two Straw Hats before at the same time, but you gotta keep in mind, it's been a long-ass time since we've gotten a new Straw Hat. It has been, I believe, 2008 was when Brook joined. It has been 9 years since we got a new Straw Hat. I was a sophomore in high school when we got Brook on the team, okay? So after this long, and with One Piece's 20th year anniversary coming up, I feel like Oda wants to do something special for that, just inherently. I don't think it's too far of a cry to say that we're going to get not one, but two new Straw Hats to kind of make up for lost time. Jinbei, who's a guarantee, but also throw a little curveball in there. Get Carrot on the team. And if that's the case, if Carrot joins the Straw Hats, I can even see how this goes down. Carrot is a rabbit mink. She loves to eat fruit and veggies. That's her thing, you know? She's like, Luffy was trying to eat her carrot, and Carrot almost, like, fucking killed him. He's like, I'm gonna kill you. It was like a reflex. I could see Carrot being on the crew, and like, I want to eat some, you know, I want to eat some fruit or some veggies or something, because that's what rabbits eat. And then Nami's like, oh, you can have some tangerines, and then she goes and eats the devil fruit by accident, like, blah, your tangerine, I think it's rotten, it was sick. And Nami's like, and I could see even Nami getting pissed, like, what are you saying about my tangerines? And it's like, what? My tangerines are not rotten. And then they look at it, and I could see a really rather funny scene developing from that, like, inherently, can't you? They look at it like, oh. And I think, you know, Snow Bunny, that would be kind of cute. That would be cute, right? And while Carrot does have some abilities of her own that make her rather formidable, she can control her Electro, and she can kind of do that jumping in midair thing, kind of like similar to Geppo, but maybe it's a little bit different, being a mink. While she does have skills on her own, one of the major issues I had whenever the time skip happened was, okay, the Straw Hats, the 9 Straw Hats that we've known, they're training for 2 years. They're going to train really fucking hard to get stronger to fight against the New World. And the problem is, whoever joins the Straw Hats later on in the New World, they're going to have to be just as strong to match the crew's strength after training for 2 years. They're going to have to just be that strong on contact. Well, Jinbei's obviously meets that criteria. Former warlord, very intelligent, been around for a while, probably the most adept user of Fishman Karate, period. I could see him joining the crew, no freaking problemo. But then you get Carrot and be like, okay, if this was pre-time skip, I could see Carrot fitting in just fine. You know, her Electro abilities, her athletic abilities, that good enough, that's fine. But after the time skip, I feel like she would have to have a little bit more power there. So a Devil Fruit, I think, would be a perfect addition there to the crew, and not just, you know, new member, but also in that ability, because she would also be, of course, the first member on the Straw Hat crew to have a Logia ability. Everybody else has a Paramecia, or Chopper has the Zoan. So, you know, round it out, have every one of every Devil Fruit on the crew represented. Also, I mean, come on now, it's been a little bit of a sausage fest, guys. I mean, hell, Brooke's been like 9 years. How long has it been? It's been over a decade since Robin joined. We need another woman on this crew. I mean, come on now. Can we get one more girl? Even if you're not into furries, come on, one more. We need to balance this out just a little bit. But yeah, so I think that's the way it's going to go down. I really feel like, I first off feel Monet is dead. And there's been some people that are even that in conjecture. I thought it was pretty much, you know, pretty obvious whenever freaking Caesar takes a sharp metal object and doesn't just stab it in your body, because when that happens, you can always be like, oh, he might have missed the heart. No, it was literally just a heart. That's all it was. A heart encased in an easily hit cube, and just, he just stabs down. But even so, there are people that look at that angle and they're like, well, the way he stabbed that icicle down is going to be the crucial factor here. If he stabbed it down at like a 35-degree angle, it might not actually damage the heart. But the way I look at it is like, okay, look, is it impossible? Is it absolutely impossible, 100% to die, I mean, to not survive a heart wound? Like, I'm not a doctor. You know, the heart is just a big solid muscle that's responsible for pumping blood throughout your body, so you obviously can't have that spring a leak. But bare minimum here, if you do end up suffering some sort of wound to your heart, whether it be like a straight up stab or just like you grazed it a little bit, beyond that, I would imagine you would have to seek medical attention immediately, or you would die. And I know it's a manga and everything, but there's just something like, that's like saying like, well, Caesar Clown took Monet's heart and threw it into a furnace. Well, it is manga, so she could still survive. I mean, no, he stabbed her heart. I think Oda went to like great lengths to actually show like, okay, there's some damage that you just can't right away with it being manga. You know, like, oh, you got cuts all over your body, you're bleeding out. Yeah, that's not a big deal. Oh, you suffered a brain injury. Well, you got shot in the face. Yeah, but you just have a cool scar now. It's fine. But then there's like, your physical heart just got stabbed and impaled and popped by a freaking ice shard or whatever that was. You can't really write that off. You can't. You know, at least not the way that One Piece is set up. Here's another thing I want to talk about, though, before I go. I was looking at all the other characters in the present storyline that died with a devil fruit. Like I said, there's not very many. There's characters like Corazon that died that had a devil fruit, but they died in like I said, in flashback land. So, you know, they're probably not going to be relevant. the ones that have died with devil fruits, you have Whitebeard, you have Vanderdecken, you have Smiley, as I stated, and you have Ace, and you have Monet. Those are the only 5 that I am currently aware of that have died in the present storyline of One Piece that had a devil fruit. And here's the thing. Every single one of these people, except Monet that we're aware of, had their death and their devil fruit very relevant to the plot in some way. When Whitebeard died, I guess I'll do Ace first because he died first. When Ace died, his devil fruit set up like the whole reason like Luffy joined the Colosseum fight. Doflamingo got his hands on the Nomi. That was a huge driving force. Sabo shows up and inherits the will of the fiery spirit of his brother by eating the Nomi and getting its power. So the Nomi was incredibly relevant to the story after Ace died. Then you have Whitebeard. Whitebeard's power, the Guru Nomi, also extremely relevant because Blackbeard managed to steal its power and take it onto his own. We still don't know how he did that, and also I should probably do a Blackbeard video probably in the future about how the hell, my theories on how he can do that. So both those characters died, both of them had devil fruits, both of their devil fruit powers, very relevant after their deaths. Next you have Vanderdecken, who died in the Fishman Island arc. Now, Vanderdecken's devil fruit did not play a direct role in the sense that its power did not carry on, and the fruit, we didn't see it reincarnated. But its power still had a relevance to the plot because it's the death of Vanderdecken and the deactivation of his ability, the Mato Nomi, which kind of led to the climax of Fishman Island. Like, the major urgency of, oh shit, Noah is going to fall on Fishman Island and kill everybody. And that kind of sets it up for the climax of the arc, that we have to stop the arc at the climax of the arc. And then Luffy's like, oh shit, we got to stop this thing. So it was still very pertinent that the fact that Hody killed Vanderdecken in order for his fruit power to disengage, it was still relevant to the plot at that point. Finally, we have Smiley, who is really just a side character, honestly, just an example of Caesar Clown's technology and the creation of Shirakuni. But it was still relevant because after Smiley died, we as the audience got to see for the first time how a devil fruit power is reincarnated. And it gets reincarnated into the nearest fruit, gets turned into a devil fruit. We needed to see that as a fandom, as an audience, and Oda made it very clear to show us what happens. He drew a scene specifically. So let me get this straight. So far, every single character that has died in the present storyline that has a devil fruit power has had that ability, either one way or another, be very relevant to the plot, whether it be the fruit being reincarnated like Ace's, or the power going to somebody else like Whitebeard, or the fruit itself, or showing us some very critical information like Smiley. In addition to that, we find out this information about the reincarnation in Punk Hazard, the same arc where Monet dies. And then, in the very next arc, Dressrosa, it's elaborated on even more, where one of Doflamingo's underlings actually explains how a devil fruit power's cycle works. And then you have the whole Nomi with the Colosseum. So all this devil fruit reincarnated, I mean, you could just say, oh, well, Oda was just setting all that stuff up for Ace. You could say that, he was making sure that the fandom understood, like, oh, the devil fruit gets reincarnated, so then when we understand that the Maromero is being back, we won't be confused. We understand how it works. But I still think, because we already knew that information, we kind of already knew the information that a devil fruit can exist more than one time, just not at the same time. That's the whole reason they have that devil fruit encyclopedia. Like if the powers could only exist once and that was it, then you wouldn't have an encyclopedia, right? So we already knew as a fandom how it worked. We knew Ace's fruit was back in circulation. We didn't need to have a really elaborate explanation on that. We kind of already understood. Doflamingo could have showed up without any of that stuff with Smiley or explaining devil fruit reincarnation. Doflamingo could have just showed up with the Nomi and we'd have been like, oh yeah, totally, we understand that. 100% why that's there, yeah. So I still think that's a big deal why he made, Monet's just in the middle of all of this, And she would, like I said, be the only character that's ever died that has a devil fruit, that just the devil fruit just disappeared, never mentioned, never talked about. I don't see any reason Monet to be alive either, even if you want to go with the idea like she still is. I still think she's dead, mostly because there's really nothing else they could do with her. Virgo died in that arc too. Virgo was a high executive in the Doflamingo family, and then in Dressrosa, the Doflamingo family was effectively wiped out. All the highest officers were taken out. Doflamingo's in probably level 6, eternal hell. You know, all the other officers are taken out. The entire freaking criminal structure has been destroyed. It's gone. That's why Kaido is so pissed. So having Monet alive now wouldn't mean anything, unless you really want to go that crazy route with it, like, Monet could still be alive so she can bust Dofi out of prison. I'm like, yeah, I don't... Dofi's not coming back. I mean, Dofi might come back later, like, as a cameo, like, we might see him in Impel Down, but Dofi's never gonna come back and be the enemy. He's never gonna break out in Impel Down and be a major threat again. He's just not. Okay, I think he had the longest arc in One Piece. He had 100 chapters dedicated to his shit, for better or worse, but I think it was a good, you know, it was a decent story to tell his character. I think that's what his character is. I think that's completed now. We might, touch up with him every few often to see him laughing maniacally at the world's events or something, but he's not going to be, plot critical anymore. At least not physically. They might bring him up again, like the Gorosei might bring him up or something, but he's not actually going to show up and be a critical threat anymore. So there's really no reason for Monet to be alive. So she's most definitely dead. And if that was the case, I could see the Yuki Nami being reincarnated on the ship, and then either I would prefer Carrot if she joins the crew, or Nami, but I wouldn't really like Nami to have it, because that's the only... I mean, out of all the 9 Straw Hats right now, Nami would be the one that I would have to go with, just out of process of elimination, but still not a fan of that. So I'm going to go with I'm going to put my bets on the Snow Bunny. I'm going to put my bets on Carrot joining the crew, eating the fruit by accident, becoming a Snow Bunny, and then we'll have the Logia powers. We might delve into a little bit more about how Logia powers work, like, oh shit, I can turn into snow now. That's so weird. That'd be cool to explain, like, the sensation, because Sabo mentioned it a little bit, like, whoa, I can turn into fire now. But it would be kind of cool to witness how that change occurs, But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Once again, I'll put a link to Roger's video in the description, since this is, something I got, basically he brought it up to me. So go make sure to check out his channel too, and all that good shit. Thanks for watching, guys. This will be Tekking101 signing out. Love you. I've been saying I love you at the end of a lot of my videos recently. I mean, I love you, not like that. It's platonically. Platonically. You keep away. I don't want to get some restraining orders against you again. Whatever. Come over here.